Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu MAGURA.
Hello and welcome to the MAGURA video workshop. This time we will show you how to fill and bleed the MAGURA MT disc brakes. For this, we need an 8-point fork wrench, a Torx T25 key, and a syringe for the oil. It is important that only original MAGURA royal blood is used, no other liquids. We will start by unscrewing the brake calipers and removing the pads from the brake. Before we remove the pads, put the transport device between the pads and move the pistons into their final position by pushing back and forth on the transport device. The reason for removing the pads is that the brake pads used for MAGURA brakes are made of organic material. This organic material easily absorbs oil. In order to avoid contamination of the brake pads from the outset, we simply remove the pads. Another reason is that by inserting the transport devices, we can ensure that the brake is filled to the optimum volume. The insertion of the transport device will make it impossible to overfill the brake. For this purpose, we'll also slightly tighten the brake pad retaining screw. We do this because the brake pad retaining screw can be used to cleanly move the transport device into the brake. Insert the transport device from the front and push it in until it clicks into place. This ensures that the transport devices do not fall out during the filling process and prevents the piston from being pushed out. Now we remove the screw plug on the brake caliper. And insert the previously filled syringe. Screw this in, and then simply tighten it by hand with the 8mm open-end wrench.
Damit wäre im Prinzip der Arbeitsabschnitt an der Bremszange abgeschlossen. Als nächstes
Next, it is important that the position of the brake handle is properly adjusted. To do this, undo the lower fastening screw and turn the brake handle upwards so that the EBT screw is the highest point in the system. If necessary, tilt the bike so that the brake handle is actually horizontal, so that the system can be filled very cleanly. Now, carefully unscrew the EBT screw on the brake handle. If available, we can now use the bottle from the professional filling kit as a collecting container. Or simply use a second syringe. For the second syringe, we recommend using a small hole on the 30 scale. Next, simply insert the syringe at the top, which will seal over the cone. I can then fill the whole system from the bottom up. During the filling process, it is important to ensure that the brake caliper is held in this vertical position, so that the cable outlet goes upwards. That is not lying flat, is actually held vertically. This will ensure that air can escape from the brake caliper if required.
Dann einfach hingehen, das Öl von unten nach
Then simply push the oil from the bottom to the top.
Und hier haben wir jetzt halt oben den Vorteil, durch diese Bohrung hier oben kann natürlich die Luft.
When using the second syringe, we now have the advantage that the air can escape through the hole behind the oil, which will allow me to push through the oil cleanly and easily. During this filling process, it is important that the oil is not only pushed through, but also pulled back. This retraction creates a vacuum in the system. The vacuum will cause any air bubbles to grow larger, and I will be able to flush out 100% of the oil.
Wichtig dann auch immer darauf zu achten, dass bei diesem
It is always important to ensure that there is still oil in the syringe during this retraction process, and that the oil is not completely pulled back, which would cause air to be sucked back in.
und dann einfach das Öl wieder durchdrücken.
Then simply push the oil through again until no more air comes through.
Dann auch dementsprechend einfach den
During the filling process, let the brake lever snap several times in case an air bubble is stuck somewhere.
dass diese dann wirklich 100%ig rausgespült wird. Sollte dann keine Luft mehr rauskommen,
If no more air is coming out at the top,
unten noch etwas
make sure that there is still some residual oil.
Und dann kann ich jetzt oben die Spritze vorsichtig
Then I can carefully remove the syringe at the top.
durch das Loch. Habe ich jetzt den Vorteil einfach das Loch
I now have the advantage that I am now able to close the hole
abziehen,
and then clearly remove the syringe at the top
sonstiges Überlauf.
without any leaking oil, etc.
Bevor ich jetzt die Spritze natürlich zur Seite ablege, die Spritze wieder so
Before putting the syringe aside, push the syringe back in until it is moved past the bore.
und dann kann ich die sauber problemlos ab.
Then remove the syringe cleanly and easily.
Oben ist es dann wichtig darauf zu achten,
At the
dass
top,
hier an der
it is important to make sure that there actually is oil at the EBT opening. If necessary, simply push in a little bit more using the syringe at the bottom so that the oil is cleanly available at the top. Then carefully close the top again.
Hier ist dann auch darauf zu achten, dass die Schraube nicht zu stark angezogen wird.
Make sure that the screw is not tightened too much.
Aus, wenn ich ganz leicht anziehe, dass es
I only need to tighten it slightly so that it is flush with the housing,
den Drehmomentschlüssel, Drehmoment hier 0,5
or tighten it to 0.5 Newton meters with a torque wrench.
Nun unten die Spritze wieder abnehmen. Hier hat es jetzt den
Now remove the syringe at the bottom. It is helpful to unscrew the brake caliper and ensure that the caliper is at about the same level as the brake handle when removing the syringe, so that there is no problem with oil flowing out.
nachlaufendem Öl. Das heißt, wenn ich hier jetzt mit der Bremszange tiefer gehen würde,
If I were to lower the brake caliper here, the oil column would go back up.
geht das Öl wieder zurück.
If I move it a bit higher, the oil goes back down,
Das System wieder in Ruhe
and I can close the whole system more easily without much oil leaking out.
Ölaustritt zu befürchten müssen. Die Verschlussschraube reinschrauben
Put the screw plug back in,
und dann auch hier wieder mit dem korrekten Drehmoment
and then tighten it again using the correct torque, 4 Newton meters.
dann einfach mal leicht überprüfen, ob das
Then simply check to see if the filling process was successful.
prüfen und dementsprechend
Check that the system is leak-proof and remove the transport device.
bevor ich nun die Beläge einsetze, einfach die Bremszange
Before inserting the brake pads,
reinigen
clean the brake caliper thoroughly with either brake cleaner or warm soapy water
mit warmem Wasser und
to ensure no residual oil is left and the pads are not contaminated after the filling process.
kein Restöl mehr vorhanden ist und dementsprechend jetzt nach dem Befüllen die Beläge doch noch verunreinigt werden. Anschließend Beläge wieder einsetzen.
Then reinsert the brake pads.
Hier einfach, wenn man hier keine Feder
This is easy with the MT Next, as the pads are not held by a spring, but with magnets, which makes it much easier to remove and reinsert the pads.
Befestigungsschraube der Beläge dann wieder.
Then simply retighten the pad fastening screw.
Und anschließend die Bremszange wieder auf den
And then reattach the caliper to the frame,
Rahmen, wie
as shown in the relevant workshop video.
gezeigt. Durchführen, anschließend
Then check the system to ensure that it is functioning correctly and is leak-proof. The MAGURA MT Next brake filling and bleeding process is now complete.